Good morning, everyone. It is Friday, April the 16th, 2021. It is currently 8:51 a.m. Central Time, and I'm coming to you live from Victory Baptist Church, located right here in Ovalo, Texas. And you know what I forgot, right? What did I forget? Everyone tell me. I forgot our professional introduction. I completely forgot to play it. So let me do that.
Looking at our world from a theological perspective. This is the Theology Central Podcast, making theology central.
So now I guess we're official, right? Until that is played, then it's not an official live broadcast. It's not an official podcast episode. I don't know. Sometimes I forget, but welcome. This is the Theology Central Podcast. I am coming to you live from Victory Baptist Church, located right here in Ovalo, Texas. It is Friday morning, and it is April the 16th. 2021. So now you have all of that information. You may want to write that date down, April the 16th, 2021, because April the 16th, 2021, we have more news indicating that the world continues to change. Now, do you need news to indicate that? No, because the world is constantly changing every single day, every single minute. Things are changing. And in one area that things constantly change is in the area of technology, in the area of man's ability to do certain things because of advances in science, medicine, technology. We grow in our understanding, we grow in our ability, so we can constantly do new things, build new things. We're constantly changing and advancing in those areas. You already know that. You don't need the news to tell you that, but you know that. Sometimes it really demonstrates itself when you're like, oh, look at that new device, or look at how they improved that, or look at what they did. Look what they're doing with cars now. Whatever the case may be, sometimes when it's something tangible, you'll be like, wow, I remember when we didn't have anything like that. Especially the older you are, the more you'll see, man, I remember back when I was, 16 and we didn't have anything like that. And now look at where we are. Sometimes when you look at it from that perspective, the change seems very dramatic, but the change is always happening. It just may be happening in areas where you don't see, and it's not as dramatic. It's not as recognizable, but the change is always happening. But what is the future of human beings as a result of the changes and the technological advances that are currently happening? And when I say, what is the future of human beings? Are future human beings, I want you to listen to me carefully, are they going to be truly human, or are they going to become something other? That's a very important question, all right? Now, I know that sounds conspiratorial, that sounds crazy, that sounds insane, but I've done a number of broadcasts over the years, and I used to talk about it a lot when I did the News in Focus program, where these advances would come along. You're like, what is scientists doing? What are they doing? What they're going to merge this, and they're going to create what? Some kind of hybrid human, some kind of, is it truly human? Is it part human? Is it part animal? Is it part this? Like, at what point does a person stop being a human being? How much genetic change can one place inside a human being before they stop being human? Now, the reason we ask this question from a theological perspective is it's obvious, right? If a person stops being truly human, well, then, can they be saved? Do they have a soul? Do they have an eternal soul? Do we view them then just as an animal and less as a human being? There becomes major theological questions, and of course, this raises ethical questions as well. If they're not truly human and they're just an animal, then what rights do they have? How can they be treated? Can we simply produce kind of a hybrid human simply so that they can grow organs so that we can then use those organs to save truly human people? How do we view? This raises all kinds of ethical issues. But from a biblical perspective, let's say you introduce enough changes, and I'm not saying it happens tomorrow, but let's say 50, 100 years from now, let's say you almost create an entire generation of humans that maybe are not even truly human. What does that do for salvation? What does that do for the human race? What happens? I mean, if they're not redeemable, because we would say that Christ died to save human beings, right? I mean, he took on human flesh. He became a human, right? The eternal God took on human flesh, true God, true man, in order to redeem to redeem humans, to redeem sinners within mankind, right? I think that these becomes big doctrinal, theological, and ethical questions that I don't think we don't spend a lot of time talking about these. I don't think we spend a lot of time processing this information. I mean, we got enough things to worry about, right? Well, today we've got to now go back to this discussion, and here's the reason why. Let me read you one headline. Hybrid monkey human embryos created in lab for first time and scientific breakthrough. Hybrid monkey human embryos created in lab for first time and scientific breakthrough. Now, maybe a scientific breakthrough, okay, but I'm telling you it's going to raise ethical questions, and it starts raising theological questions. Here's just some of the information. The groundbreaking work could one day lead to vast increase in the number of available organs for transplant. But some critics say it raises serious ethical questions. Again, that's what I kind of made a reference to it in my opening intro there, that some of these advances, yes, so you create this hybrid thing, okay, are they truly human? If they're not truly human, they're kind of viewed as an animal, then can you just use that to say, oh, basically they're being used simply to grow organs that can then be taken from them? I guess they could just be destroyed after the organs are harvested so that they could then be used to preserve and save, quote unquote, I'm putting this in quotes, true human beings versus these hybrids. So do they have any ethical rights? How can they be treated? I mean, yes, this is a brave new world we're entering into. Here's some of the, just a couple of things here from this news article. In a move that some scientists say raises serious ethical questions, researchers have for the first time embryos that are a hybrid of human and monkey cells. It says the research could one day slash waiting list of organ transplants. The demand for that is much higher than the supply. Writing and so it gives some information here, some more information. So please note, it's the idea of being able to use this to create basically organs that can be transplanted, and so that could save life. Well, that sounds good, but what are the ethical questions, and what does it ultimately mean? Where are we going to go? Where are we going to go with this? And again, how much genetic? And I don't even think theologians. And when I say theologians, all Christians are theologians in the sense that we all are to be students of God. But I think anyone who thinks about things from a theological perspective, whether professionally or just as the average Christian, we're all, in a sense, to be theologians from that perspective. I don't know if any of us has a good answer of how much genetic manipulation can occur before someone ceases to be a human being, or put it this way, how much genetic manipulation can occur in the making of an embryo before that will become a person that's not truly human. I don't know if there's no formula to figure that out. And of course, we're going into something that the Bible does not give us a clear, like, how does this work? How much manipulation can occur? But here's one of the reports. This is from NPR. I think this was from maybe yesterday. It may have been from this morning. Here we go.
For the first time, scientists have created embryos that are part human, part monkey. They did it for medical research, but the experiment is raising some serious ethical concerns. NPR health correspondent Rob Stein has the story.
Thousands of people die every year in the United States waiting for an organ transplant, so researchers have been trying to find new ways to get more hearts, kidneys, livers, and other organs for transplantation, including trying to grow human organs inside farm animals like pigs and sheep by injecting human stem cells into sheep and pig embryos to see if they can grow into human organs in those animals. Juan Carlos Ispasua Belmonte is at the Salk Institute for Biological Sciences.
This is one of the major problems in medicine, organ transplantation. The demand for that is much higher than the supply.
But it hasn't worked so far, so Belmonte teamed up with scientists in China to try something new, injecting human stem cells into embryos of a species closer to humans, monkeys. They injected 25 human stem cells into 132 monkey embryos and were able to keep the embryos alive for 19 days. They call these part monkey, part human embryos chimeras, from the fire-breathing monster of Greek mythology that's part lion, part goat, part snake.
Our goal is not to generate any new organism, any monster, and we are not doing anything like that. We're trying to understand how cells from different organisms communicate with one another.
Belmonte says their chimera embryos have already revealed important new clues about how cells communicate. He thinks this could lead to new insights into early human development, the underlying causes of cancer and other diseases, aging, and maybe someday how to grow human organs in farm animals like sheep and pigs. Other scientists agree. Jeffrey Platt is doing related research at the University of Michigan.
This work is an important step that provides very compelling evidence that someday, when we understand fully what the process is, we could make them develop into a heart or a kidney or lungs.
But this experiment raises some really serious ethical concerns, especially about someone going further and trying to make a baby this way. Or could, for example, some of the human cells accidentally end up in the brain? Kirsten Matthews is a bioethicist at Rice University.
Should it be regulated as a human because it has a significant portion of human cells in it? Or should it be regulated just as an animal? Or should it be something else? And what point are you taking something and using it for organs when it actually is starting to think and have logic?
Or emotions. And what happens if the creature makes human eggs or human sperm and they mate? Here's Hank Greeley, a bioethicist at Stanford.
Nobody really wants monkeys walking around with human eggs and human sperm inside them, because if a monkey with human sperm meets a monkey with human eggs, nobody wants a human embryo inside a monkey's uterus.
Now, Belmonte says he doesn't want to do anything like that. He just wants to study these part human, part monkey embryos in lab dishes. But bioethicists like Greeley say society needs to start thinking about how far scientists should be allowed to go.
I don't think we're on the edge of beyond the planet of the apes. I think rogue scientists are few and far between, but they're not zero. So it is, I think, an appropriate time for us to start thinking about, should we ever let these go beyond a petri dish?
The National Institutes of Health has been considering lifting a ban on funding for these kinds of experiments, but is waiting for new guidelines from the International Society for Stem Cell Research, which are coming out next month. Rob Stein, NPR News.
What can be said? What can be said as things continue to change and as advancements continue to be made? You will find people who will push the envelope and push the envelope and push the envelope, even if they go completely rogue and are doing so. And not just that, even if you have 95% of all the earth and all of the countries and all the governments to say, hey, we're going to ban this, we're going to ban this. All you need is one rogue government to say, no, go do it. Go do it. We're going to do this secretively. We're going to do it in private. And we're going to push this as far as we're going to see where this ends up. And then where do you go? Yes, you've got ethical questions. Do we regulate it as a human? Do you regulate it as an animal? Yes, those are questions. You even growing human organs inside of an animal. Does that not raise ethical questions? And again, though, you start playing with this, what happens? What are the, I guess the ultimate question, again, from a theological perspective, is depending on how all of this plays out. Okay, now I know a lot of speculation comes into this, but the issue is how much manipulation and tinkering and how much of this can occur before you end up with something that's not truly human from a biblical perspective. When I say truly human, in other words, it's not really created in the image of God. It doesn't have the image of God. It doesn't have an eternal soul. At what point does that occur, and what does that mean for the human race moving forward? We've talked about this before. We've done broadcasts on this before. Human beings, what we want, I mean, let's be honest. Here's what we would like. We all want this. We will all want the fountain of youth, right? We all want to feel like, I mean, we just got to be honest here. Now, I know you can say, but no, as a Christian, I don't want that. I understand that, but I'm just saying that deep down, there's a little bit of this in all of us. All right, I think if we're honest, all right, we all wish we could find that fountain of youth, right? Oh, if I could have a shot that would make me go back to basically being like I was when I was 20, with my physical appearance when I was 20, the same energy, the same strength, all of that. We all wish we could get that. Very few people would turn that down. I think very few people would. They'd be like, yes, let me go back to that. People want to improve their looks. I can't, for men, yeah, get full head of hair back, right? Don't have thinning hair, whatever the case may be for the particular guy, whatever the case may be, you want that. You wish you could change this and change. You just think of all of the physical changes that you would be. Yes, if you can give me a shot here, if we could do a little gene manipulation here, if it could reverse some of this, fix some of this, great. And then you've got when you're having organ failure, yes, I want a transplant so that I can live. We want to live. We want the fountain of youth. We want longevity. We want strength. We want youthfulness. We want beauty. We want all of those things. We want that. To say that we don't, it's just not true. It's just not true. There's deep down, we want this. Now, I'm not saying that necessarily should be a Christian perspective, but I'm saying it's something inside of us. We want to live. We want to live. And so a large portion, I think even within a large portion of Christians, we are willing to accept a lot of this if it gives future hope of survivability, getting rid of diseases, that getting rid of pain, getting rid of suffering. We want the removal of pain and suffering. We want that. And so we'll accept a lot of this. I'm not saying that we will accept everything. There's a lot of it we'll accept. But how much of it do you accept before you cross the line and now you end up with these issues there? Is our desire, let's ask even a more deeper theological question. Is our desire to remove the consequence? Now, listen to what I'm about to say here. I want you to really put your thinking caps on here, because you may not agree, you may disagree, and I'm just throwing out some thoughts here. Right now, I'm not trying to be dogmatic here. I'm just trying to get you throw out some thoughts. At what point do we adopt a non-Christian worldview in regards to our desire to want to avoid the consequences of sin? What do I mean by the consequences of sin? Sin entered into the world. What comes along with that? The world is under the curse, so the world groans. We see plague, famine, storms. We see all of that. Our bodies are under the curse. So what do we? We age. Our bodies break down. Disease, pain. It gets older. Those are parts of that's a part of our existence. Now, we may not like it. I don't think nobody likes to look in the mirror one day and look at a photo when you were younger and look at you now and go, man, I wish I could go back to that. We all have that feeling. But how much of wanting to reverse or remove the consequences of sin, at what point does that become non-Christian way of thinking. As Christians, should we be willing to embrace those consequences and not seek to remove it? Now we try to remove it all the time, right? We try to remove it. This morning, I haven't slept. I haven't been to sleep, and I don't know. I haven't slept much in a couple of days, right? So, and some of that just deals with I hate sleep. Some of it deals with neurological issues because of my seizure disorder. And then this morning, I was having some serious, headache issues, right? And I had to take medication. Well, that's trying to alleviate part of the consequences of the fall. Right now, I'm not saying that's wrong. I'm just saying, how far can you go to try to remove the consequences of sin before you cross a line that's no longer a biblical way of thinking? Should we be more accepting and embracing some of that as being a part of this experience of living in a fallen world, that we experience these things? But when you start trying to manipulate the genetic makeup of human beings and trying to insert different things, and I mean, we've talked about all of the different things they've tried to do. We've talked about genetically, basically designer babies, where they can come along and go, okay, and we've talked about science trying to get to this position. Well, let me just throw you an idea out. Okay, so I want a baby. Okay, you want a baby. All right, so what we can do, basically, I'm just trying to give you an idea. You go basically into a store and, a laboratory, and you tell them the kind of baby you want. Okay, I would like my baby to be 6 foot tall, blue eyes, have, a certain level of intelligence, avoid all of these possible, have no genetic predisposition to these kinds of diseases, no genetic predisposition to these kinds of addictions. And basically, you design your baby. And so not even going through the normal process of procreation, they basically can design the baby, create it almost in a laboratory, and then there you have your baby. Well, how much of that genetic makeup? One, that's of trying to avoid the consequences of the fall, but number two, at what point does that stop being a human being? At what point does that stop? That's the theological question. So there's really two theological questions here that I want us to contemplate. How much of trying to avoid the consequences of sin, how far can we go till we enter into a sinful, an unchristian worldview? How much of it can we try to remove? Again, nobody likes any of it. But how much of it can we try to avoid? Now, that's the advancement of medicine, is constantly trying to push back at the consequences of sin, right? So much of what we try to do. So there's a level that we accept, and there's a level that we think is perfectly acceptable, and we don't think there's anything wrong with it, and we accept it. But then there comes a point where you're getting into these, like I said, designer babies and this genetic makeup that I don't know. I think we start crossing some lines. So that's the first theological question, is how far can you go to try to, in a sense, avoid and remove the consequences of sin? Number two, at what level does genetic manipulation, genetic makeup of messing with human beings, how far can you go before that stops being truly human, and then we can no longer see them as someone who can be redeemed? We'd have to view them as not having an eternal soul. Now, a lot of people, depending on how you read it, a lot of people, if we go to the book of Genesis, and there's not agreement on this, trust me, there's not agreement on this, but there's at least one way of interpreting Genesis here. Genesis chapter 6, verse 1, Genesis chapter 6, verse 1, and it came to pass when men began to multiply in the face of the earth, and daughters were born unto them, that the sons of God saw the daughters of men, that they were fair, and they took them wives of all which they chose. And the Lord said, my spirit shall not always strive with men, for that he also is flesh, yet his days shall be 120 years. Now, some people believe that this is just, in Genesis 6:2, you have a godly line and an ungodly line, and basically this is, intermarriage starts taking place between the godly and the ungodly, and God is not happy about this. Some believe that the sons of God and the daughters of men, sons of God, are fallen angels, basically like demonic angelic beings who began to try to procreate with human women, and this is going to end up corrupting the human race, corrupting it so it cannot be redeemed, corrupting it so that the Messiah cannot ultimately come forth to redeem humans. So some people believe that's what's happening there. Now, again, there's way different ways of interpreting that. But if we go with the idea that this is somehow was trying to corrupt humanity so that they could not be redeemed, that they could not be redeemable, then how much genetic tinkering, manipulation can occur before you end up with something that's not truly human. Now, some will argue, well, the minute you stop the normal procreation the way it was designed to work, and anything deviating from that is problematic. Well, there's a lot of deviating from that in the way of trying to help people who cannot have babies. There's a lot of things going on there. So how far can you go? And again, especially when you start messing with the genetic makeup of human beings, it's a crazy story. When you listen to that story, it was funny because I saw this story popping up all over the place about this crazy, embryo that's part human, part ape. And I saw a number of websites who were reporting it going, well, I guess Alex Jones was right, because Alex Jones from InfoWars had talked about this, I don't know, feels like 20 years ago, warning that it was coming. So it's here. So, maybe some of the conspiracy theories out there turned out to be true in this particular area. That doesn't mean we should support all conspiracy theories. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that's how crazy this was. That this was just viewed as, insane people talking about this. And then today we're reporting it as, hey, for the first time ever. And hey, wait a minute, there's all these ethical questions. What do we do? There's the ethical and there's the theological. Ethical, are they going to regulate, depending on how far this goes, do you regulate it as a human or do you regulate it as an animal? That's going to have ethical questions. Theological, how far do we go to avoid the consequences of sin before we start engaging kind of in an unbiblical worldview? And how much genetic manipulation and tinkering can occur inside a human being and human cell and human genetic makeup before you end up with something that's not human from a biblical perspective. In other words, they cannot be redeemed, and they do not have an eternal soul. This is going to raise lots of questions. I don't know how, again, I don't think the majority of the planet is going to allow these things to continue. They're going to try to ban and control it. But there are going to be those in certain countries that are going to allow this to go way further than anybody probably wants it to go or even thinks it will go. And I'm not saying it's going to happen tomorrow. I'm not going to say it's going to happen next year, but 5-10 years down the road, I think we're going to get some revelations that certain countries have been doing experiments, and we're going to be like, wait, they did what? Wait, they produced what? Wait, what? They have a full-grown what? What is it? And the world's going to be like, what do we do now? And I think that, because again, technology is not going to go backwards. It's only going to move forward. Right? And as it move forward, you're going to get bigger and bigger breakthroughs and more advancements in what they can do. And then we're there. I don't know how does the church deal with that then? It's like for the longest, the church was like, okay, so how do we address, if, once gay marriage occurs, and let's say you have two people who are married, and then, all the different ethical and theological issues about, okay, someone comes into the church, all right, they're husband and husband, they have 2 children, and now they become Christian. Do you say, break up the family? Just break up the family. Or do you say, wait a minute, how do we work this? Okay, well, I guess you're going to still be in a relationship, but you cannot engage in physical activity. All right, so you've got to abstain from physical relations. How do you work all of that? Some of those questions were asked. Now we're going to be like, okay, what if someone walks into the church and they're part ape and part human? All right, what do you do with that? Okay, do you say, well, I'm sorry, you cannot be redeemed. You're part ape. You're not truly a human. Like, what do you do with it? We don't even know if you have an eternal soul. Now, yes, that's far-fetched, and I'm not saying it's going to happen tomorrow, but I'm saying that's like some weird theological question that, Bible students will have to be answering maybe after I'm long gone, maybe 20, 30, 40 years from now. Maybe people are going to have to be answering those questions. But I guess it's fun. I guess it's fun to speculate. It's kind of horrifying to speculate. And yes, it's like certain books. It's like certain movies, certain TV shows. It's kind of maybe talked about some of these kinds of things. And I don't know what we do there. I don't know. And I don't know. And sadly, what I think will happen is the church won't pay any attention until they'll have to react. They won't be proactive. They'll have to react to it, which is what Christianity tends to do. Instead of being proactive, it's reactive. But there have been Christian ministries out there who's talked about this. I'm going to go back and I'll have to find it. We did, I think, 2 parts. I think I did 2-part episode dealing with a Christian ministry that was talking about not transgenderism, transhumanism, and talking about, just think about it. Transgender, the transgender movement raises a lot of these ethical questions, okay? Someone goes through full transition. They go through full transition from male to female, female to male, and obviously biologically, we understand that. But I'm saying that now, do we treat them like they come into the church, they want salvation, but they've gone through the full transition? They've gone through the full transition. What do you do? How do you treat them? How do you how do you help them forward? There's all these ethical questions. And again, a lot of the full transition because of medical advances, we can do things now. They can, block this hormone, add this, surgically do this. They can do a lot of those things which couldn't have been done in the past. Maybe in the past, the only thing a person could do is put on, maybe makeup and dress differently. Now you can go full surgical and changes. So how do you address those individuals? Well, in that case, they're still human beings, still creating the image of God. So we can treat them as, yes, you believe in Christ and there is salvation. We can take care of that. But when you go to transhumanism, where now is there even truly a human there, that raises a whole different question. But this is the world which we live. It's the world and it's the future of where we are going. And we have to then, as Christians, try to be able to address these things, hopefully in a biblical, logical, and thoughtful way. And at the same time, demonstrating compassion, mercy, and love. At the same time. We can never forget that. I don't know where all of this goes, but it's a crazy story. It's crazy. I know it's all over the place. You may have your own thoughts and opinions on how you process all of this, but yeah, it's where we're going. And we're going to have to do more thinking about it. I at least wanted to bring this to everyone's attention. Probably 90% of you have already heard about the story. It's right there on the Drudge Report. If you check the Drudge Report on an everyday basis, NPR's reporting on it. It's everywhere now. So I at least wanted to throw out the theological side. I wanted to at least throw out the theological perspective to this, or the theological questions to this story. There's the ethical and there's the theological. And now you can consider both. All right, you can email me at newsif@yahoo.com, newsif@yahoo.com. I'll be back on the air here shortly. God bless.